Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltiziak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. This season, it's all grit. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we're going to reflect on the Detroit Lions' final 53-man roster, plus their newly assembled practice squad. Then we'll discuss the expectations for the Detroit Lions and the NFC North with an updated perspective now that training camp is wrapped up and the roster's been finalized. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Trevor Nowaski, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today are our two very familiar voices. We've got Coach Jerry Angers, named Michigan High School Coach of the Year, as well as Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions, and he's also mentored numerous players to the college level and some all the way to the NFL. Coach, great to have you here.
Great to be here. Great time of year right now, that's for sure.
That it is. We have a ton of content to get into today. And it's also good that we're joined by James Cook, the senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. You can also hear him on his podcast called The Get Around that drops on Mondays. I think they just had their first or second one. James, good to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, guys, training camp's over. Preseason's over. We know a little bit more about this team. Let's start by taking a look at that 53-man roster. And again, it was a 52-man roster when the Lions put it together. Now it's 53. After we talk about this, we will get into the practice squad additions as well. So let's start with the departures. Who did not make this team? There were going to be some tough ones here. And we knew that it was going to be some guys we were saying goodbye to that we thought were very capable of being on this roster. So, Coach, is there any ones that caught your eye that you were like, tough to see this guy go, or just we're surprised to see somebody go?
Well, I think Gilmore was one of them. You know, I mean, he's been around, and I was just watching the Pittsburgh game again, and, you know, he had some big tackles where he came downhill and hit people. That kind of shows what our depth looks like. I think, you know, some of the other guys might still get signed. The problem is we have three big receivers on the practice squad right now trying to find that big guy. So I think that's you know, I thought maybe Betts would get brought back too, you know. But, you know, other than that, pretty much played itself out.
All right. James, anybody on your radar that you either were surprised got let go, or, you know, just your thoughts on somebody not making the 53-man?
Well, I mean, Donovan Peoples-Jones was kind of a surprise, even though that the news of that kind of leaked out, you know, just a little bit, you know, given that they had traded a draft pick for him. You know, so that was a little bit of a surprise. Other than that, I think James Mitchell, I guess, is one of the guys that was a little bit of a surprise just because he was a 6th round pick 2 years ago. But, you know, when we're going to get to the practice squad later, both of those guys will pop back up.
For sure. I think, you know, like you guys said, the leaking of the Donovan Peoples-Jones thing, that was not a shock, but a disappointment, I think, is the way I was looking at it. Because, you know, we talked about Josh Reynolds not coming back, and we were like, it's up to Donovan Peoples-Jones to fill this void. And all camp, we just heard it wasn't happening. But we were expecting it to just switch and change, and it didn't happen. So that was a surprise. I got to be honest, another thing that surprised me was Nate Sudfeld's departure. Okay? And honestly, for me, this was important. It was important because as much as everybody trusts Brad Holmes, and as much as we all trust Brad Holmes, there's just something I have not seen in the backup quarterback position, whether it was Boyle or Blau or Sudfeld, that we were all seeing as well, or that maybe Holmes was seeing. And I don't doubt the intelligence of Sudfeld and the way he knows the playbook and the way he can help Jared Goff get ready for a game. But guys, doesn't that seem like you'd want Sudfeld in the coaching position, move him to an assistant coach? But you don't want, you know, we've seen enough of him over his career, which is actually very little, to tell you if something happens to Goff, that's not the guy you want going in. And you don't want him taking up that roster spot as the number 3 guy if you can add another defensive back or wide receiver. So to me, the Nate Sudfeld departure was an important thing to see.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I mean, it's funny because I just remember Campbell talking about Fromm coming in and being a professional. I heard him say that, coming in, even though he's short term. So I think that kind of raised the flag to me that Sudfeld, something was going on. Maybe Sudfeld was saying some things or doing some things or things they didn't like, or he didn't try to get better. I don't know. I mean, it just, Dan Campbell, when he throws these little tidbits out during his press conferences, I always listen to him because I'm saying, God, he's talking about something there. So I agree, though. I mean, he's been around and he's done a great job helping the quarterbacks, but I think they decided to move on and get themselves with the right guys in that can win football games for us if need be.
Yeah, and again, I think we just finally realized we all know his ceiling as a quarterback on the field. And if you are a team that has Super Bowl aspirations and you want someone to be your number 2, it's going to be Hendon Hooker or it's going to be somebody else, but it's not going to be him. And again, if they brought him back as a coach and paid him whatever they wanted, be totally fine with that. The running back room, we kept 4. I thought there was a slight chance we might keep a 5th, and you know what? We'll talk about that when we get to the practice squad. So that makes sense now that we saw the practice squad guys come back. And we really emptied out that wide receiver room. Oh, my goodness. I was excited. Well, I guess we'll talk about the guys who did make it in just a moment. But we really emptied that out, and we'll talk about the Donovan Peoples-Jones thing in a minute as well. In the tight end room, I guess Zylstra and Mitchell both not making the 53-man. I think most of us thought one of them might make it, and the Lions would go 4 deep at the tight end position. Well, guys, let's transition. Guys who made it. James, let's start with you on this one. What caught your eye? What made you happy, excited? What are you thinking? What are some of your takeaways?
Well, keeping 7 linebackers is interesting. I didn't see that happening with keeping Neiman and then picking up Trevor Nowaski off of waivers. So they've got 7 linebackers now. But I mean, Neiman and Nowaski are both good special teamers too. So it's not like they won't see the field or anything. But I just didn't expect 7 linebackers to be on the first day's initial roster. And it's also interesting that Dan Skipper made a 53-man roster for the first time in his 8-year NFL career.
Those are 2 very good points that we have to talk about before you add any more points to it. The first one, let's talk about that. 7 linebackers, right? And it was 6 yesterday, but then when the news broke today about Trevor Nowaski, minutes before the news broke, I was texting with Coach, and I was like, I just checked out the Arizona roster. Trevor's not on their final 53-man. I was sure he was going to make it the way they claimed him last year. And then the news broke that the Lions got him back, and we were so excited for it. And maybe the special team stuff with the kickoff thing plays right into this. Coach, what's your reaction to Trevor coming back and the Lions having 7 linebackers?
I was pretty excited. I was trying to figure out how I was going to pay to go out and watch him play him and root for him only. But the big thing is the Lions didn't want to lose him last year. That's why they put him on the 53-man. And then, like you said earlier, Cardinals, why don't you just leave him alone? But the big thing is he's back. He knows the system. I talked to his dad tonight, who's my tailgating partner from Saginaw Valley. So I'm pretty excited about that. And there were a lot of teams contacting him, and his special team coach for the Cardinals even said the same thing. You were probably not clear waivers, and they were correct. So excited that they brought him back. I think he fits well with the team, and he knows all the guys. And I think that's the biggest thing. He knows the system, and he can probably walk right in and be ready to play.
Yeah, that will be great. His familiarity will help as well. So we were rooting for him, and this was just a very pleasant surprise seeing that he's back. And we saw how much he contributed to special teams last year for the Lions during the preseason, and they liked him so much so they elevated him because others were trying to get him. And then James, you said it, man. Dan Skipper, 8th season is the charm. I mean, grit, tenacity, work ethic, believing in yourself, never giving up. I mean, is there anything else that we can add to this? Coach, is this like the perfect story that James just brought up about Skipper making this roster?
Oh, it was a great call on James' part. I mean, for a guy to be on a practice squad for 7 years or 6 years, and then finally start getting to play with the Lions, and of course he'll always be remembered from the Dallas Cowboy game. But he's one of those. He's a lunch bill guy, man. He's a blue collar guy for the Detroit Lions, and couldn't ask for a better guy to be there. And he is a Dan Campbell guy all the way, and just so happy for him.
All right, James, any other excitement over somebody to make it, or a surprise that somebody make it, or anything that just caught your attention after those first two you gave us?
Well, the swap at long snapper of Hatton making the team over Scott Daly, and then the Bears picking Daly up when their long snapper got hurt. So that was an interesting one. And then Strickland making the team at safety, and them keeping 5 safeties. Strickland beating out CJ Moore for that last spot at safety was an interesting one that I didn't necessarily expect. I figured CJ Moore's special teams ability would get him there, but Strickland had a really, really good preseason.
Yeah, Coach was actually just talking about Strickland recently. Coach, what did you want to weigh in on what you saw from him and why you like this move by the Lions?
Well, I think he was able to play a couple different positions in the defensive backfield for one. 2, he just come downhill. The guy's a hitter. He's always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. I mean, a couple of the big hits he had during preseason pretty much tells you that he reads the play, acknowledges what's going on, deciphers where the play is going to go, and he gets to the spot where the running back or the wide receiver is going to be. So I think that's the big one. Him and I'm going to feed off him, and Parker Hess too. We talked about Parker Hess, the tight end slash. I told you fullback. He kept lining up fullback. I kept watching him, and I kept watching him get more and more reps. And then, of course, I started watching him at fullback, and the dude can block. There's no doubt about that. So, those 2 guys, I think, emphasize what the Detroit Lions are all about. And I guess they go into the Skipper mold too. They're probably going to have they're going to probably share lunch on the bench together, eating out of a lunch pail.
That's the thing. The versatility with Parker Hesse being able to play that fullback position, I think, was probably that deciding factor over Zylstra and Mitchell. And we'll get to those guys later when we talk about practice squad. I like the keeping of Isaiah Williams because, I mean, from what I saw at camp and from what we saw in the preseason games, the guy just came to play. And, it all started when we talked about that undrafted free agent contract he got. There was something they saw that they wanted to see out of him. And he performed. And even though he wasn't the X guy that's tall outside they were looking for, there's a skill set there that they think they can work with and use. And he provides depth for a player like Khalif Raymond in that role. So I'm excited that they kept Williams. And a lot of people were speculating they might not keep James Houston, but I'm just glad that happened.
His ceiling is way too high, and he would have got snatched in a heartbeat. And we, off the waivers, you guys, right? I mean, how many guys got picked up off our waivers, right? We talked about that. I think there was 2 of them. I think, or waivers, whatever. I think James had pointed that earlier when you and I were texting with James, and they would have grabbed that guy in a heartbeat. Anybody that has 8 sacks in 7 games can't miss the season because he's injured. I think he's back. He had a great last game against the Steelers. And, I watched that 3 tackles, 2 hurries, a sack, run stop, set the edge. You knew he played himself into making that team.
Well, let's move to offensive line a minute then. Yeah, and by the way, yes, they would have claimed him. I totally agree with that. And no Lions players were claimed off waivers. A couple of them did get signed, I believe, but no one got claimed off waivers, which also plays into our practice squad. But 10 offensive linemen, James, that's a pretty big number.
Yeah, well, you got Skipper making it, and then Manu, of course, Sorsdal, Awashika, and then they kept Nice as well, which was kind of the one that surprised me. Although, he had from all reports, he had a good camp. I think it was Penny Sewell who was raving about him during training camp.
I was one of the ones that I think Sewell gave him a nickname, and those are when you hear these different things on that, you're starting to think, all right, if Sewell gave him a nickname, he must like him, and we got to believe what Sewell says. So I agree. And I mean, Jamarco Jones, well, that's again practice squad, but again, a lot of linemen, trying to find that depth, and one guy that's still on IR, with Mahogany. So really interesting. But look at the depth. I think part of that has to do, James and Matt, is last year we had all those injuries on the old line, and we were, at one point I think we had three new starters, and two of them I think were rookies. So getting some of that depth and some guys that have been in there before, I think it's going to help us out. So
We also know that around the league, there isn't a lot of depth at offensive line. And so the Lions got some guys. I mean, Coyote Awashika filled in admirably last year. Kobe Sorzel's another year, developed, and Giovanni Manu, we drafted him. So those guys were going to be there. So if you have this talent, if they were to let one of them go, I'm sure somebody else would have grabbed them because of that depth issue around the league. And you want those guys to fill in if someone does go down for a game or two.
Yeah, and I think Nice making the team also is a thing that this may be a redshirt year for Manu. So they couldn't try to release him and try to put him on the practice squad because he would get snapped up. So they got to keep him on the 53, and then so if you're thinking that maybe he's not going to play a whole lot this year, then that's the reason why I think they kept 10 linemen rather than 9.
Yeah, you're right on that, James, because they drafted him knowing he was going to take some time to develop and stuff, kind of like with Colby Sorsdal last year. They didn't expect much, but again, they kept him on the roster the whole time because if you expose him, someone else is going to grab him, and then your project is gone and what you're hoping to develop. All right. Any other thoughts? Anybody on the defensive side of the ball you guys want to talk about that you're glad the Lions kept, you were surprised they kept? I know we talked about the number of linebackers. That is interesting with 7. And so, that's a position we already thought they had some depth. So we would have thought maybe, a different position. But anything you want to weigh in on the defense?
I think defensive line, they ended up signing 3 guys to the practice squad. I think that kind of a concern with Brock Martin, but it doesn't sound, I mean, from our standpoint, we're not in the locker room or in the training room with Brock Martin. So, I think and again, DJ Reader is probably not going to be ready till week 2, I would imagine. Who knows? He does have another whole week to get his legs underneath him. So I think that's going to be the big one. Edge guys, we pretty much knew those guys were, and again, we're going to lose John Kaminsky. But with all the new rules with the 53 man and stuff like that, that's why there's some things being changed in there where they can protect some guys and then put them on IR and bring another guy up. So, but that's all I see.
All right, James, anything from you on the secondary, any other parts of the roster? Defensive backs, they put them all together, and they've got 11 right there. And, you've got Davis, Arnold, Robertson, Rakestraw. We were all expecting that. We were expecting Vildor. They kept Khalil Dorsey. They've got Branch, Kirby Joseph, Iffy. But then they also kept Brandon Joseph along with Lauren Strickland. So we're not sure on Iffy's health. And, we've got some other guys that are battling back from injury. So this may have been a thing of keeping that depth there, especially at the safety position. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, Strickland is, an in-the-box safety, which is what Iffy was going to be, so I think that's an insurance policy for his injury there. And Dorsey played pretty well in the preseason, and once Mosley got hurt, I think he really stepped up and moved into that number 6 corner spot.
All right, and the last thing we talked about long snapper, and a lot of people have already talked about the athleticism of Hogan Hatton and what he can do, and that might have been one of the things that won the Lions over on him. Jack Fox, our punter, no discussion there. Jake Bates, we're going in with him as our kicker. The Lions did not bring a kicker to the practice squad either. They're going all in on Jake Bates. We've seen greatness, we've seen worry, and we've seen a lot of stuff in between. How you guys feeling on this one? Coach, let's start with you.
I'm excited about it. I just think he loses some focus. I think when he's had those critical kicks, he's made them. And I think that's going to transfer into the game on Sunday when it matters, and Thursday and Monday or whatever day. I missed a field goal here, missed the next point there. Preseason, still working on some things, but he's still got that big leg. And he's gonna win some games for us. We talked about that, and his confidence level is going to be that much higher. And the Lions coaching staff does a great job of making sure people are at the top of their game when it counts. So let's run with it, and we'll see what happens.
How about you, James?
Yeah, the Hatton thing is interesting, and essentially gives the Lions 8 linebackers on the roster because he can also play linebacker in a pinch as well. So another little versatility thing there too.
All right, and yeah, as far as Jake Bates goes, it's going to be an interesting ride, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm in the way that I'm optimistic and hopeful. Michael Badgley's injury was unfortunate, and that changed things. But I don't know that I see another person out there that I would have rather grabbed during these roster cuts. So, like Campbell said at a recent press conference, it's not like he's arrived. There's going to be growing pains, and so as long as he's getting better, that's all they're looking for. So until further notice, that's our guy, and let's hope it goes well. Okay, today we saw a lot more moves. Now, we already mentioned the only move the Lions put in, the only waiver claim that we know of at least, they only got one, was Trevor Nowaski, linebacker out of Arizona. He was with the Lions last year. Lions got that. That brought the 52-man roster up to 53. And then we brought a whole heap of guys back to our team by putting them on the roster on the practice squad. And there's brought some new guys into town. I'm just going to go right down here from the Lions. Linebacker Mitchell Agude, center Kingsley Igukwan. I got his name wrong. I'm going to get that better. Sorry about that, Kingsley. Quarterback Jake Fromm is the guy the Lions brought back as opposed to Sudfeld. Running back Jamar Jefferson. Happy to see that back. Jamarco Jones, we talked about him, the tackle. James Mitchell and Shane Zylstra both make their way back from the tight end room. You've got Chris Smith, Isaac Ukwu, Kyle Pecco, Pat O'Connor on the defensive line there. I think I already said Jamarco Jones. And then wide receiver, Tom Kennedy is back. We're adding Allen Robinson and Tim Patrick. Safety, CJ Moore is back. And then the last member would be Donovan Peoples-Jones. Now, it's been reported he has signed back to their practice squad. The Lions released all their transactions today, and they do not have him listed on their transactions. So maybe it's something that will happen tomorrow, but it has been listed. He will be back as well. Overall look, this may be the best practice squad the Lions have had since practice squads existed. Coach, what are you seeing here?
We could win a lot of football games with that group. And the glue to it is Tom Kennedy. I mean, that dude, he ain't never going away. I love him, man. That's just great stuff. He's probably just a great practice player. He gives us a great look. He's tough. He's enjoying life, being with the Lions and being on that. I think, we talked about Jamarco Jones. He's a great guy to be in the, basically on the practice squad to help back that offensive tackle position. I think we the edge guys, Akuda and Uruguay, who's a young guy, and Akuda's been there before. And talk about Chris Smith. Campbell talked about him. I think we talked about him last show that he keeps getting better and he keeps continuing to work. So, I just think we added some great depth with that area. Some guys that if somebody does get injured, we're not looking to the waiver wire or trying to pull somebody off a couch, but we can go right into the next room over the next part down and bring these guys up. So I agree with you. I think we just have some great pieces to fit into players that we don't need be. And every one of those guys, we watched them play, and I don't fear any of them coming out on the field if need be.
All right, James, before we talk about any of the new additions to the roster or through the practice squad, talk about the guys the Lions brought back. Who caught your eye? What are you excited to see about these guys?
Yeah, keeping Fromm over Sudfeld was interesting. Keeping Jamar Jefferson over Bam Knight, I think, was an interesting one. I kind of thought that Knight's return skills would maybe keep him on the practice squad. Keeping Pat O'Connor, it's interesting that they essentially kept 5 defensive linemen in the practice squad. If you count Agude, they have him listed as linebacker, but I mean, really, he's kind of a a defensive end a little bit too, kind of like James Houston. And then if Donovan Peoples-Jones comes through, then they have 4 wide receivers on the practice squad, which is also interesting. And kind of if you count Agude as a defensive lineman, they don't have a linebacker, but as we mentioned before, they essentially have 8 on the active roster, so you don't necessarily need one of the practice.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And just to remind people, the rule is you can elevate a person 3 times from the practice squad to the active roster. And that's, I guess, a great luxury you have. By bringing Zylstra and Mitchell both back, you're keeping depth, because people were surprised they both got cut. After Ben Johnson talked about how deep of a room it was, I'm actually kind of surprised that Zylstra maybe didn't get claimed by somebody who might actually need a little bit of depth in their tight end room. But we saw what happened late in the season with injuries. And if you have these guys here and you can pull one of them up, that's great. I really like that. I love that Jamar Jefferson's here. I mean, we're starting to see stuff from him. He's battled injuries, and that's kind of what slowed some of his growth. But I agree with you, James. Zonovan Knight has looked good. I don't think anybody signed him yet, and I'm kind of surprised that that's the case, because he definitely showed some flashes and some ability as well. Jake Fromm, I'm happy about that. I mean, I wanted us to go get Bailey Zappi. I mean, I wanted us to get somebody that has a little bit more of a ceiling. At least, Jake Fromm showed something in that preseason game, and it gives you a little bit of hope there. Again, you're looking at Hendon Hooker being the number 2, and you're hoping Hendon Hooker progresses and improves if he ever has to see the field. We obviously don't want that to happen. But let's move over. And CJ Moore coming back at safety, I think that's an important one we need to look at too, because he could play a vital role if somebody goes down on special teams or in that defensive secondary, because he has done things for us in the past. And so I like that we brought him back on the practice squad. All right, well then let's talk about the big guys. I'm talking about the tall ones, okay? This is what's making the headlines. All right, Tim Patrick, Allen Robinson. We've got both of these guys. They're later in their career. They're after some injuries that have happened in their careers. But we've got them there to help us out, because the talk, all we've ever heard for about the last, 3 months is who's going to be the X receiver for the Lions. Ever since Josh Reynolds left, which was more recent than that, people were really concerned and being like, all right, what's going to happen here? And we all thought Donovan Peoples-Jones was going to be the guy. And so let me start with you guys. Coach, start with you. Tim Patrick, Allen Robinson. Where are these guys? What do you see out of these guys at this point?
Well, I'll let you big. I mean, you said big, and I'll tell you right now, Tim Patrick, that he is a dog. His hands, his catching ratio, his not dropping balls for catching, going over defenders. He's big. He moves well. I think he's a 4.5. Who cares about that? He's 6'4". He had 2 freak injuries, the ACL and then Achilles. Knock on wood. All I can think is Mosley on that, because but he had a really good preseason. And, reading, and you've read it, and I'm sure James has read it too. A lot of those people in the Denver area are sad to see the guy go. Great team player. You don't hear anything bad about him. I mean, that's the thing. And work ethics and continuing to try to make himself better. Does he fit the mold of the Detroit Lions or not? Holy cow. Allen, Robinson, another big guy, late in his career. Bringing those guys in, though, into that room to help our young, to help J-Mo, to help St. Brown. Not that St. Brown needs a ton of help, and help anybody. Isaiah Williams. I think they're both great fits for it. One of them's gonna rise to that 53 man, where one I think will stay back and give us a great look in practice. So I think 2 great additions, and knock on wood that Patrick stays healthy, because man, he is scary. He is a scary wide receiver.
And before I go to James to get his thoughts, Coach, Donovan Peoples-Jones back on the practice squad. What are your thoughts on that move?
You know what? I hope he's on it. And because I hope that helps him realize he's got to put in some extra effort. There's something wrong. He is too athletic to not be starting for the Detroit Lions. That's just my feeling. A guy that had 700-800 yards in Cleveland comes back and he can't get open and he can't get the ball and he doesn't make catches. And I don't care if the pass is bad or thrown or something's not going on. So I think that's one. Maybe he doesn't like the block. I don't know. I mean, we're not there. I'm not there at practice every day, but hopefully those three guys, People Jones looking, saying my career's either going to be over with or I got to step up and make some things happen. So again, all pluses. Having those three big guys with Kennedy in that room, not on the 53 man.
All right, and James, Allen Robinson, Tim Patrick, what are your thoughts on those guys? And then you can even touch on the Donovan Peoples-Jones if you want.
Yeah, I mean, they got the big targets that they wanted. They said they needed a big target in the receiver room, and they got that. Robinson's 6'2", 220. Patrick's 6'4", 220. Patrick is a very good blocker for a wide receiver as well, and very good route runner, very good hands. So really the only knock on him is that he'll be 31 in November. Robinson is already 31, and that Patrick has missed the last 2 years with injuries, and that's not been the only injuries he's had in his career. He's always been injury prone, even from college. But when he's played, he's been very productive. He's had a couple of 700+ yard seasons with the Broncos without having great quarterbacks throwing to him, and not being the number one guy. So I mean, those are pretty good numbers for him. As far as Donovan Peoples-Jones, the thing I'm kind of wondering is, they want their wide receivers to be blockers, and he put on some weight this offseason, and I think it was to help him in that part of the game, and I think he's adjusting to a little bit to his game of adding a little bit of bulk to his frame, and hopefully he can, over the course of the season, maybe adjust to that a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a good observation with that weight and the blocking. And I'm happy that they brought him back to the practice squad, because there might be something there that he can contribute. I'm the wide receiver position on the practice squad is probably what excites most people the most. I mean, there's multiple things to get you excited about this squad, because it is a well-assembled practice squad. But I think I feel a lot better about whatever's going to happen with that X position now that we have Tim Patrick and Allen Robinson. And yeah, they're not 24 years old and just hitting their prime. But let me share a little text message exchange I had with my uncle and my cousin. Huge Bronco fans, okay? They follow Broncos their entire life. And a couple days ago, or yesterday, I was like, the Broncos are expected to get rid of Tim Patrick. He's been injured a lot, obviously. What are your thoughts? My uncle's one-word response: stupid. Okay? And he doesn't mince words. And there's a time when everybody was raving on Royce Freeman, and he goes, that guy, I don't remember his name, like Phillips or somebody, like some other guy that was smaller. He goes, oh, that guy's running a lot better. And guess what? That other guy, he ended up being the starter for the Broncos that season. So I said to him, so you still think Patrick's decent? My uncle and cousin both simply said yes. And so they followed the team. They watched all the preseason stuff. I think Tim Patrick's going to be that guy that steps up in the X position. Coach has talked about how he's done in the past, as long as he can stay healthy. And we don't need someone to catch 80 passes. We've got people to do that already. But we need two things. We need production that will give us, 25 to 40 catches in the season, right? Maybe 300 to 500 yards, maybe 4 to 5 touchdowns, something like that. That another option, basically someone who can catch the ball. And I'm not going to compare any of these guys to Anquan Bolden, but the Lions got Anquan Bolden in the final year of his NFL career that he played for a full season. I think he went to Buffalo after that, but didn't play. Bolden put up some pretty fantastic numbers that year for the Lions in his final season. If we had something like that, that would be ridiculously good. But here's the other thing, guys. If St. Brown were to miss any time, even just 1 or 2 games, suddenly that wide receiving room looks really different. I get it. A lot of people have said the Lions have so many weapons, it's okay if we don't have that. But there's value to that for a variety of reasons. One is, if JMO or St. Brown goes out, well, who else do you have to fill in? And so do either of you guys want to speak to the depth and how this helps make that need not such a big need now going forward?
I think with that depth part, you got Williams, who's a rookie, undrafted, of course, and Raymond, who we know what Raymond's all about. And I think it gives you great feeling that we have these guys that we can pluck, even though they're 30, 31, even though they've had injuries. They played the game. They've been around. You don't play in the NFL that long as a wide receiver and not be able to contribute to a team with a good quarterback, great quarterback, with a great tight end, with a great running game like the Detroit Lions have. We're going to pull every ounce out of those guys, and those guys are going to give us every ounce that they have, and it's going to make us that much better. And it does get us into a situation to where we don't panic as much and go, oh my God, St. Brown, knock on wood, misses a game, or JMO or something like that. So I think it's huge. I think that goes back to the tight end position too, with Zylstra and Mitchell, with Laporta. I mean, those are all depth pieces that right now, when I look at that second list of guys, I'm excited because I know that those guys can come in and do what we need to do for 1 game, 2 games, or 3 games, and we're going to be in great shape. So I just think the Lions did a great job. Brad Holmes and the boys did a great job getting the right people in there to help this team get to where they're trying to get to.
All right, well, I think it's unanimous. We're all pretty thrilled about this practice squad. They had a plan, they executed it, and we've got a lot of great players that you could pull from here if we needed somebody to sub in on the offensive side of the ball in a lot of different positions. So let's talk about our outlook for the Detroit Lions this year, and we'll briefly touch on the other teams in the NFC North. Let's start with the Lions and talk about an area of strength. What area are you most excited about to see from this team this year, or where do you think they're going to be the strongest? James, let's start with you on this one.
Well, I think the strongest area of the team was last year too, which is the offensive line. But I like how the defensive secondary has become a strength where it was not last year, especially corner mainly. So I really interested to see how Terrion Arnold and Enos Rakestraw, fare in game competition in the actual NFL, not preseason games. So that I think that depth right there is going to be so much of a difference on that defense.
Yeah, watching those guys develop, and if they can gel as the season goes on, it's going to take that big weakness from last year and definitely make some adjustments there. And that offensive line, I mean, that's probably the biggest area that needs to stay strong for all those other parts to work. Coach, how about you?
Well, I agree with the secondary. I was watching the Rams game last year, and when we went to zone coverage and stuff like that, Stafford had a pretty big day against us. And then when we were able to press and bump and push, the plays that stick out last year, are bounce off the helmet for a big catch, and Nakua getting loose. Nobody covered him because we sat on a short route instead of playing over top to where we could bump and run and keep a safety over top. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing to watch this year. And I think our defensive line pressure is going to be so much better with the pieces that we have. I'm going to say it again: Wingo. I was watching him again today, and again, he's not going to be the best on the D line, but he's going to give us that depth. And so, looking forward to what that defense. And I think AG is just drooling right now with the pieces that he has, and what he's able to do with it, as you can tell by how many different people have played different positions. And I think that's going to be the big thing. And James Houston's coming off the edge, boys. Here he comes. And so, and again, offense, we're not talking about. We know that the scary thing is the offense has gotten better personnel wise. And if we stay healthy, it's going to be a fun season.
Yeah, the offense is actually what I want to talk about, because yes, the offensive line is where it all starts, and that's where it has to happen. But I think the Lions running game is going to be better this year because David Montgomery has another year in the system, and Jahmyr Gibbs has another year in the NFL. All right. So those two guys right there. And then who knows what Sione Vaki's going to bring? He's the mystery man here. He's a new piece of the puzzle. But I think the game's going to slow down a little bit for Gibbs. And that's going to be huge because there were times he missed some of those short passes. And imagine him getting those. I mean, we saw Vaki getting them in the preseason. He looked like a bigger Theo Riddick out there with those third down passes that Riddick was known for. But I think you're going to see a lot more. Can I say they're going to see a lot more creativity when we're already so creative? I don't know. But yeah, Ben Johnson's going to be really happy he came back and didn't take that head coaching job in Washington because there's going to be a lot of fun, I think, with this offense. And I know people expect the running backs to be good, but I think we're going to see a different level. And I mean, I just can't wait to see the creativeness. So that's my thing. I know you guys have hit those other areas are pretty good too, but I'm looking forward to seeing what the running backs do. Well, I guess let's see. Is there any area of concern? Is there an area, I will start. I was concerned with the wide receiver X position. I was like, we need a big guy. I know Campbell said we don't need to have one to run this offense. And while I'm sure that's true, I mean, look around the NFC North at the other wide receiving groups out there. You got to keep up. I mean, and no disrespect to the roster because we did make some good moves here that I think make me feel better about it. But could you imagine putting Herman Moore in his prime on this team? I mean, it would take that offense over the top. And that's why I was even going to say, heck, even Anquan Bolden's final year in the NFL, just somebody like that. And Tim Patrick might be that guy. Allen Robinson might be able to provide some of that. So again, we don't need major contributions. The area of concern I did say was wide receiver 3. I guess I'm going to put it at safety right now, only due to Iffy's injury. And if Iffy's injury isn't long-term or anything, then I think we have depth and we're fine. So, Coach, let's start with you. Any area of concern you have for the team right now?
Well, I think injuries, just an injury here, an injury there is a big concern. And off those injuries, the injuries of the guys that we brought in, that they can stay healthy. And because those are huge pieces, you talk about Davenport, and you talk about Reeder and you talk about Patrick, these guys came in after they've had these injuries. Can they sustain a 17 game season plus playoffs and still be an integral part of this team? So, I think that's the biggest thing right now is concern that we don't start losing guys right and left. And we had a stretch in that preseason. I started to get a little nervous. And again, hopefully, those guys can come back and play over them and play through them. And we know you're only 100%, only one day of the year, and that's the first practice, and then it's all downhill from there. So let's try to stay in that 85 to 95 percentile and see what we can do with this great team that Brad Holmes has put together.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Those injuries, because we have guys who are coming off of injuries, who have battled injuries, and that's Brad Holmes' MO. And it has worked out at times, so hopefully we will get some healthy guys out there and some higher production than maybe some people are even expecting, or at least as much as people are hoping for. James, how about you? Any areas of concern you got with the team?
I don't know. A kicker, I guess. I don't know. There's not really a whole lot of areas of concern really right now. I mean, I'm not worried about only having 4 wide receivers because they've got Patrick on the practice squad. So I think he's a good, dependable receiver that they can call up whenever they want. So I'm not really too worried about a whole lot of spots. I mean, until injuries start coming and you have attrition, then you got maybe some guys that you don't necessarily want to be starters out there or something. But as of right now, I mean, this roster from top to bottom looks pretty darn good. And even the practice squad, like Jerry said, the practice squad looks maybe the best that the Lions have put out there. I think that the reason why they kept Fromm over Sudfeld is because you can only have 6 vets who have more than 2 years of experience on the practice squad now. Sudfeld would have qualified as one of those 6. Fromm does not.
See, you're the mastermind here. You know these things. Like, I didn't know that. I'm guessing Coach didn't know that aspect. He knows lots of things, but I'm thinking that might be one thing he didn't know. So that's some great insight there.
Yes, it is. Yep. It's huge for James to come up with that one and say that's pretty. And again, I think I texted you guys yesterday about chess and checkers or something like that. And Lions are playing chess right now.
Well, and James, you brought up the wide receiver depth on the practice squad. Once those guys got signed, I wasn't too concerned either about the wide receiver depth. And I guess one area we didn't really talk about because they're not players or coaches, but an area of strength should be the consistency of the coaching staff. Not every team can say that, and that's going to give the Lions a leg up. This offense isn't learning a new scheme. This defense isn't learning a new scheme. And so there's a lot to be said for that when 75 or 80% of the guys already know it, and you're bringing in 10 to 15 to 20% to add to those pieces. So, all right, well, guys, here's a commentary, a thing I want to talk about with the Lions, and everyone's been talking about it, going for it on fourth down. Dan Campbell goes for it a lot on fourth down. And I feel like people look at it in a very simplistic lens. They look at it like you're playing Madden, the video game, and he just goes for it all recklessly. And I don't think it's reckless. I think it's very, very calculated. And I also don't think it's just because they don't think they have a kicker, because Michael Badgley was a very capable kicker last year. And I got to believe that, and Campbell was asked about it with Jake Bates, will he kick more or will that change things? And Campbell said, well, you have to ask me after I do it. He goes, and then I might not tell you anyway. But I think he looks at so many variables, right? We've kind of talked about this before. You know, if you are at 4th and 2 and your option is put a top 5 offense on the field to try and pick up 2 yards, or punt the ball and put the number 24th defense or 21st defense on the field to try and stop an offense. Could you see the logic in maybe going for it with that top 5 offense? So I think he's looking at a lot of variables like, hey, can my defense stop this team? Are we on the road? Are we at home? You know, he went for that 2-point conversion 3 times in a row on the road. He might not have done that at home. And so now the kicker will play into it for sure. And Campbell said, you know, they've got to set the kicker up for success. But I just want to throw out there, there's a lot of depth to these decisions of going for it on 4th down. And his players have bought into what he does, which I think that, Coach, you're going to tell me, I think that's probably the most important thing, is that no matter what you're doing, your team's got to believe in you. So, Coach, let's start with you on the 4th down decisions, and then James will talk to you.
Well, there's a lot of things that go into it. Analytics goes into it, of course. They were 80% correct with last year, the Lions, by going for it on 4th down. Is it a long 2 yards? Is it a short 2 yards? That also takes effect. Let's, for instance, we kicked the field goal before halftime against the 49ers last year. Did that 3 points help us? Hell no, we lost the game. If we'd have scored a touchdown there, we probably would have won the game. You know, and he even said it. He looked at it and he said that was a long 3, I think he said. You know, or whatever, long 2, I think it was a long 3. So those are things that he goes, sometimes I think he just sits there as a coach and says, I told my guys we're going to do this. And my guys, I trust my guys, and my guys trust me. So let's go and get it. So, you know, there's a lot of things that come into it. We can second guess to our blue in the face. You know, when we ran at halftime and we didn't kick against 49ers, I was like, ooh, I didn't like it. I like that we put on some more points and extended that lead. But I also took in a situation, you're playing against 49ers. Where were we playing at? He went for it 3 times against the Cowboys on the road. And again, I'm not going to second guess him. I never will. But the point is, that's what he does. That's his MO. And you have to take analytics into it. You have to take in saying, I got the best offensive line in the group. How many times did we go for it on a 3rd and 7 where we ran the ball and got it, on a 3rd and 8 and we picked up the 1st down? Because that mindset was, we're going to go for it on 4th down anyways if we get the 4th and 1. That's okay when Philadelphia does the tush push. That's what they set up. He even said it. We line up for 4 downs on offense when we get over the 50-yard line. That's Dan Campbell's MO. You know what? And let's live with it. And yeah, we got a good kicker now. Might he stretch a lead with a 60-yard kick? How much time's left on the clock? How many timeouts are left? Can we get into better field goal position? Can we score a touchdown? Analytics takes over. We're not in those rooms. Trust the man. Trust the team. Let's go Lions.
All right, James, how about you?
Yeah, there's a lot of, like he mentioned, analytics, and I think a lot of it is that, and that if you just do the what the success rate is for the Detroit Lions with the offensive line they have of getting 1 to 2 yards is pretty high. And even when you don't get it, I think it's just you're going to score more points than taking field goals. Just getting touchdown. If you get a touchdown 1 out of every 2 times that you get in the red zone, that's 7 points. If you take the field goal both times there, it's at most 6. That's pretty basic math. 7's more than 6. And the Lions were even better than 50-50 last year. So, I think, and it just changes the opposing defense too. The opposing defense on third down can't just pin their ears back and then rush Jared Goff. They got to play third down almost like it's second down because they know that there's a fourth down probably coming.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It keeps the defenses guessing a little bit. And when you're guessing, you can't just go on muscle memory and just go all out for something. And also, wasn't it the playoff game against the Rams when the Lions went for it on fourth down and threw a touchdown pass to Sam Laporta instead of taking the field goal? And the Lions won that game by 1 point. So, again, you got to look at the whole big picture here, folks. Just pointing that out because a lot of times I feel like the national narrative on the Lions in fourth down is that they're too aggressive and it's going to come back to bite them. And you can make a lot of arguments, but I think if you look at the logic and the facts, I think they back up that these Lions players in this team has been more successful based on the calls they have made. Mm-hmm. And again, go ahead, James. All I was going to say is if it works, you're a genius. And if it doesn't work for any reason, you're always second guess. What were you going to add there, James?
And I think that's exactly right, too. And also, the players love it. And they love Dan Campbell because of that. And I think it's just another thing where the players will play that much harder for Dan Campbell because, they love doing that.
All right, guys, now it's time to talk about the schedule. Lions can win any game on the schedule. I fully believe that both of you guys think that way. And, you talked about how, James, you're impressed with the strength of this team and whatnot, but we know it's not going to be easy. And so let's look at that first 4 games for the Lions. We have the Rams, Bucks, Cardinals, which coach doesn't have to travel to anymore, and the Seahawks game. I'm going to pick them going 3-1 in that first 4-game stretch going up to the bye. I like the matchups. They could win all 4 if we're being completely honest, but I'm just leaving the space for a hiccup in there. Any thoughts on that first quarter of the schedule, Coach?
I think 3-1, 4-0. If we get through those first 2 games the way we need to, those are going to be 2 wars. 2 teams would be in the playoffs. It's going to, make the third game a little bit different.
James, how about you?
Yeah, if they come out of that 3-1, I think that they'll be pretty happy. Obviously they want to be 4-0, but 3-1 I think will be pretty good. The Rams, the Buccaneers are both going to be motivated after having lost to the Lions in the playoffs last year. So those games are going to be a little more difficult than I think people think. And then at the Cardinals are going to be a better team than last season, a lot better, I think. Kyler Murray, I think, is going to have a pretty big breakout season this year with the talent that they put around him. And then the Seahawks are what they are, and they've always given the Lions trouble in the last few years.
Yeah, and there are no easy games on our schedule this year. The NFC North as a whole is bigger and better. Not bigger, but it's better. And so I'm going to say 3-1 after those first 4, and I would be very happy with that, as you guys said. The next 4, we go to the Cowboys off the bye week. Then we go to the Vikings. We're home for the Titans, and then we're off to Lambeau Field for the Packers. 3 road games in 4 weeks. Coach, what do you got here?
Let's go 2-2 on that, possibly 3-1. Going out to who knows what's going to happen out in Dallas, and anytime you got to play a divisional opponent on the road, you're going to have a tough time, even though last year we went into Lambeau and beat them, and then we turned around and lost them. So, I would say 2-2 at the worst, but 3-1 I think is very feasible.
I swear you're reading my notes. I've got 2-2 or 3-1 here because I'm thinking the same thing. James, how about you?
Yeah, pretty similar. They'll be coming off the bye week against the Cowboys, so I think that is going to help them a lot in that game. And then you've got at the Vikings. The Vikings offseason has kind of had some major hiccups with player personnel stuff coming up.
Yeah, the Titans probably made some of the most free agent signings I've seen in a while this offseason. So that's going to put the Lions around 5-3 maybe at this point. Could be 6-2. I don't know. That's kind of what we're thinking. Then the next group, we start off by going to Houston to play the Texans. Then we host the Jaguars. We go to the Colts, and then we host the Bears on Thanksgiving. I'll start here. I've kind of got us going 3-1 again, or potentially 2-2, but I'm going to go with 3-1. The Texans are going to be the tough game. That's going to be a Sunday night game, I believe. That will be everyone's going to tune in to see. Is CJ Stroud doing what he did last year? The Jacksonville Jaguars are looking to be better. So I'm putting the Lions right there. What do you have, James?
Yeah, I could see that too. The Texans one is going to be a big game. The Texans are going to be another team that's going to be, I think, way better than they were last year. And Stroud was great last season as a rookie. He can step up even just a little bit with the weapons that they've put around him. They should have a pretty good defense and they are a pretty good offense this year that can just pile up some points. Jaguars, I think, are a beatable team. They don't have the defense that they used to have, when they were Saxonville. And the Colts, I think, is also a pretty beatable team where the Lions should be favored even on the road. And then you got the Bears, who are potentially going to be an electric team with all that offense that they put around Caleb Williams.
All right, Coach, how about you?
I'm thinking 3-1. I think the trip to Dallas and then getting back out to Houston again is going to help us because we're going to be able to have that our bodies set the right way and know exactly what has to be done on that. Right, we're out there. I just don't. I think that the Bears are going to be. They have a lot of talent around them and things like that. But I just think we're gonna put some serious pressure on Caleb and come out of there. I think the one loss that we have in there will be one that we probably don't expect, but I think we're going to win the big games.
Okay, and that's how it happens sometimes, right? We have those losses we don't expect or don't account for, so that's why we kind of throw that number in there. Well, Coach, let's look at the last quarter of the season, which we're going to lump into 5 games, and this is not an easy end to your season. We host the Packers on a Thursday night, then we play the Bills, and then we travel to Chicago for our true outdoor weather game just before Christmas. Then we hit the road to the 49ers, a game everybody's going to be waiting all season to see, before finishing at home against the Vikings. How do you have us finish in here, these final 5, Coach?
Oh boy, that's the gauntlet right there. It'll be interesting to see how we do. I don't see us going any worse than 3-2 in that stretch. I think we maybe even surprise one. If we're healthy and we're getting ourselves, we'll be, running on all cylinders. I see a 3-2 easily, to be honest with you with that, even though we have to get on the road and travel some of those big games. And again, I look at the 49ers game and, even if we do lose to that game, as long as we beat them in the championship to go to the Super Bowl, who cares? But, it'll be interesting to see where we get in that situation. But I don't see anything worse than 3-2. I'm going off of last year that we never lost 2 games in a row. And I just think with this staff that we have and with these players that we have, they're not going to have a double hiccup.
Yeah, you cannot understate or overstate the fact that the Lions did not lose back-to-back games. And, I mean, it seems like that comes down to not just the players rebounding, but the coaching and the way those coaches got them ready for the next game after coming off of that. James, how are you seeing those final 5?
Yeah, I think 3-2, maybe even 4-1. I think I could see the Lions maybe stumbling at the Bears. They always seem to have, the last couple of years under Campbell, they have one bad road game where they just don't show up. You were at the Ravens game last year, and then you had the Panthers game the year before, where they just lost to teams that they shouldn't be losing to, or just got blown out. And yeah, I could see that maybe being that Bears game, but you've got the Packers and the Bills games are at home. That should help them. They'll have all the no motivation in the world in that 49ers game on the on the road there in the second to last game. And then you got the Vikings for the last game, which I think should be a win. I don't think the Vikings will be in playoff contention or anything by then. So I don't know that they'll have a whole lot to play for.
Okay. And yeah, I'm still surprised the Lions did not get scheduled up against the Packers for that final game. Just expecting where those teams are going to be. Obviously, if J.J. McCarthy was healthy, we would probably be expecting a very different Vikings team at that point. But they will be improved. I think. So we'll put our full record together here, and where each of us are in just a moment. In the division, is it safe to say every team is potentially improved from last year, from their record and whatnot, even with the injuries and the things that Minnesota's dealt with? Are you guys expecting each of these teams in the Lions division to be better than last year? Coach, where are you at on this?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, the Packers, everybody's building the Packers up to possibly have the best offense, and the Vikings are going to be better. Of course, Chicago's got Caleb, and they've put this great offensive team together with all these great receivers and these great running backs and things like that. So, I think there's going to become, we may have some shootouts in those things. And are the other team's offense as good as our offense? And which defense is going to make the big play? So, yeah, this is, you could have a 4-way tie in this league, maybe. I mean, it's that good, but I think we're going to come out on top on it. I just think too many people are doubting us, and there should be no doubt in what they've been witnessing over the last 30 games or whatever.
All right, James, how about you?
Yeah, I think the NFC North is the toughest division from top to bottom in the NFC. I can see the Vikings in week 7 maybe being a little bit of a problem. TJ Hawkinson should be back by then. He's supposed to miss like 4 or 5 weeks, I think, is kind of what they're looking at now. And they played the Vikings in week 7, so he'll be incredibly motivated because he got hurt against the Lions. The whole division. I mean, like we talked about, the Packers and the Bears offenses could be scary.
Yeah, I think the Bears have the potential to be the most improved team in the division. A lot of that's going to depend on the play of Caleb Williams, but they've added playmakers on offense, multiple, and that defense is not anything to mess with either. So, and then the Packers have become the darling of the division for a lot of people to say, hey, I think the Packers are going to win the division this year. That's been the cool pick. If I know Sports Illustrated has the Lions on the cover, and a couple of those writers pick the Lions to go to the Super Bowl. But a lot of people are like, that's the dark horse or whatever is the Packers. And then maybe they're not even the dark horse because they did so well against Dallas in the playoffs last year and against San Francisco. So here we go. What are the final standings going to look like? Now, I'm going to give you guys some insight. I spoke with a reporter out of Chicago, one out of Minneapolis, and one out of Green Bay. And their episodes dropped earlier this week. Chicago and Minnesota reporters both picked Green Bay to win the division. And the Green Bay Packer reporter raved heavily about the Packers, but still picked the Lions to win the division based on, I believe, they have that much respect for what the Lions have done, and they believe in what the Lions are doing. So I guess, James, let's start with you. What do you have for the final standings? What order do you have? Do you have numbers and just kind of what's your guesswork on this?
I mean, I think the Lions are the favorites for the division, and then I would say the Packers after that. I could see them finishing within a game of each other in the division, and it being an incredibly tight race. And then the Bears, and maybe even a close third. I just think that the Bears have so much youth in that offense that they're going to make some mistakes here and there. So I think that's going to put them a little bit behind Detroit and Green Bay. And I'm totally fine with people picking somebody other than the Lions to win the division and hand them more bulletin board material and more motivation.
All right, Coach, how about you?
Totally agree with everything he said. As long as we stay healthy, we'll win the division. And the Packers last year, they had receivers going down right and left, getting injured and stuff. Is Reed the best receiver? Who's their best receiver? Who's the best guy? The Bears have built themselves, have basically assembled a team on paper that looks really, really good. But I got to go by team. I got to go by the coaching staff, the front office, the fans, the teammates, the players, the guys that love each other, the brotherhood, the lunch pails, the Lions. End of story.
I love it. I love it. I did say in one of the interviews or a conversation I had that I wasn't as bullish on the Lions, but I still picked them to win. And what I meant by that was we're not going to win the division by 3 games this year. I don't see that happening. We have a tougher schedule. We have a tougher division. I still think we win the division, though. I'm going the same order you guys are, and I think it's, before J.J. McCarthy got hurt, I didn't know the order between the Bears and the Vikings, but I've got all 4 teams finishing 1 game apart. I've got the Lions followed by the Packers 1 game, and then the Bears 1 game behind them, and the Vikings 1 game behind them. And the Lions, they might go 11-6 instead of 12-5 this year. You know what? Kansas City went 11-6 last year and won the Super Bowl. So that number doesn't matter. Obviously, getting home field advantage in the playoffs would help a lot. And I haven't looked at San Francisco or Philadelphia's schedules to know what their records could be either. But if we take care of our business, that'll fall into place as well. Coach, any final thoughts before we get out of here? This has been amazing and very information-packed.
No, just looking forward to how this all plays out with the practice squad and the new guys and the old guys and the injured guys and the guys that have missed practice because of injuries, and just looking forward to that first game a week from Sunday.
Awesome. James, how about you? Any final thoughts?
I'm excited to get this NFL season going. High school football, college football, all the football. I'll just take it all, right? So.
All the football. That's right, folks. All the football is back. High school and college this week, NFL next week. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks. If you enjoyed this episode and you didn't catch out the previews we did with the Packers, the Vikings, or the Bears, those are up as well. Check those out for in-depth analysis on our division rivals. You can find more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. Please please subscribe, please tell your friends about this show. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.